The news flashed across screens worldwide, sending shockwaves through the global community. United States invades Greenland. The unprecedented event left people in disbelief, glued to their screens as they tried to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Disbelief quickly morphed into outrage as images of American troops landing on Greenlandic soil flooded the internet. The unthinkable had happened, and the world watched in horror as the invasion unfolded in real time. A NATO member The United States, long a champion of democracy and freedom, had become the aggressor, its actions echoing the dark days of empires past. The symbolism was stark, and the world struggled to reconcile this new reality with the nation's historical image. The invasion marked a turning point in history, one with potentially catastrophic consequences for the entire world. Analysts began drawing parallels with other major historical events, predicting a domino effect that could destabilize global. The community, already grappling with various crises, found itself staring into the abyss of a full-blown global conflict, ignited by an act of naked aggression. The United Nations convened an emergency session, and world leaders rushed to find a diplomatic solution. The world held its breath, bracing for the inevitable fallout. Anxiety levels soared as people awaited further developments, fearing the worst. The invasion of Greenland was not just an attack on a small, peaceful nation, it was an assault on the very Why would the United States, a global superpower, risk international condemnation and potentially ignite a global conflict by invading Greenland? The answer lies in a complex web of strategic calculations, resource ambitions, and geopolitical maneuvering. Greenland, despite its icy facade, holds immense strategic and economic value, making it a tempting target for a nation seeking to assert dominance in the Arctic region. Greenland's location is its most valuable asset. Situated between North America and Europe, it serves as a crucial gateway to the Arctic, a region rapidly gaining importance due to climate change and the opening of new shipping routes. Control over Greenland would grant the United States unparalleled access to these routes, enhancing its military and commercial reach. Beneath Greenland's ice sheet lies a treasure trove of natural resources, including vast reserves of oil, natural gas, rare earth minerals, and fresh water. These resources, increasingly sought after in a resource-constrained world, hold immense economic potential, fueling ambitions of energy independence and technological dominance. The United States, driven by a desire to secure its future in a rapidly changing world, saw in Greenland an opportunity to achieve several strategic objectives simultaneously. Control over Greenland's resources would lessen dependence on foreign sources, while its strategic location would bolster its military presence in the Arctic, a region witnessing increased activity from rivals like Russia and China. However, the potential rewards came at a steep price: the violation of international law and the alienation of its allies. The international community would likely view such an invasion as an aggressive act, leading to widespread condemnation and potential sanctions. The geopolitical ramifications would be significant, potentially destabilizing the region and sparking a new era of Arctic militarization. The United States would need to weigh these risks against the potential benefits of controlling Greenland's strategic and economic assets. In summary, Greenland's allure lies in its strategic location, vast natural resources, and the potential to enhance the United States' military and economic power. But the path to achieving these goals is fraught with significant geopolitical challenges and ethical considerations. As the Arctic continues to thaw and new opportunities emerge, the global stakes will only grow higher, making Greenland a focal point in the struggle for future dominance. The question remains, is the potential gain worth the inevitable cost? The United States must carefully consider its next steps, balancing ambition with responsibility and recognizing the profound implications of its actions on the global stage. The future of Greenland, and indeed the Arctic, will be shaped by the decisions made today, with far-reaching consequences for international relations, environmental stewardship, and global security. As the world watches, the United States must navigate this complex landscape with wisdom and foresight, understanding that the allure of Greenland comes with both great promise and great peril. Denmark, despite its relatively small size, reacted to the invasion of Greenland with a mix of outrage and defiance. The streets of Copenhagen and other major cities were filled with protests as citizens expressed their anger and disbelief at the sudden aggression. The historical ties between Denmark and Greenland run deep, with the latter being an autonomous territory of the former. This relationship dates back to the early 18th century, when Denmark established colonial rule over Greenland, which has since evolved into a partnership based on mutual respect and cooperation. The invasion was not just an attack on Greenlandic soil, it was a direct assault on Danish sovereignty and an affront to its national pride. The Danish people viewed this as a violation of their national integrity and a challenge to their historical bonds with Greenland. The Danish government, though initially caught off guard by the audacity of the American action, responded swiftly and decisively. Emergency meetings were held and a comprehensive strategy was developed to address the crisis on both diplomatic and military fronts. Diplomatic channels were activated, with Denmark rallying international condemnation of the invasion and demanding the immediate withdrawal of American forces from Greenland. The Danish foreign minister engaged in a whirlwind of diplomatic activity, seeking support from allies and international organizations. The Danish Prime Minister, in an impassioned address to the nation, vowed to defend Greenland's autonomy and territorial integrity, declaring that Denmark would not be bullied by a larger power. The speech was met with widespread approval and bolstered national unity. Denmark, despite its limited military capabilities, pledged to support Greenland in any way possible. This included logistical support, intelligence sharing, and the provision of essential supplies to bolster Greenland's defenses. Danish warships were dispatched to the region, while financial and humanitarian aid was mobilized to assist the Greenlandic people. The Danish Red Cross and other humanitarian organizations played a crucial role in providing relief to those affected by the conflict. The Danish government also sought to leverage its position within NATO, calling for an emergency summit to address the crisis and demanding a strong and unified response from the alliance. Denmark's appeal to NATO emphasized the importance of collective security and the defense of smaller nations against aggression. The invasion of Greenland had awakened a sleeping giant. Denmark, often seen as a peaceful nation, was now mobilizing its resources and rallying its citizens to stand firm against the invasion. Denmark, often perceived as a peaceful and accommodating nation, had shown its resolve, determined to defend its territory and uphold international law. The Danish military, though small, was prepared to act decisively to protect its interests. The world watched as this small nation stood up to a global superpower. Section 4, The Alliance Divided, NATO's Dilemma. The United States invasion of Greenland sent shockwaves through the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a military alliance that has been the cornerstone of Western security since the end of World War II. Established in 1949, NATO was designed to provide collective defense against the threat of Soviet expansion, and it has since evolved to address various global security challenges. The alliance, founded on the principle of collective defense, now faced its greatest crisis, an act of aggression by one member against another. This unprecedented situation tested the very fabric of NATO's unity and purpose. The very foundations of NATO were shaken, as the trust and solidarity that had bound the alliance for decades crumbled under the weight of this unprecedented event. The core principle of mutual defense was now in question, as the trust and solidarity that had bound the alliance for decades crumbled under the weight of this unprecedented event. The future of NATO seemed more uncertain than ever. The United States, accustomed to leading the alliance, found itself increasingly isolated. European members, already wary of the unpredictable nature of American foreign policy under the current administration, were quick to condemn the invasion. European leaders, who had been growing increasingly concerned about the direction of US foreign policy, saw the invasion as a dangerous escalation that could destabilize the entire region. They were quick to condemn the invasion, viewing it as a betrayal of the alliance's core values and a violation of international law. The attack on Greenland was seen as a betrayal of the alliance's core values, which include mutual defense, respect for sovereignty, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. This act of aggression was not only a direct challenge to NATO's principles, but also a dangerous escalation of tensions in an already volatile world. The global community watched with bated breath as the crisis unfolded. Emergency meetings were convened, but the divisions within NATO were stark and seemingly insurmountable. While some members, particularly those with close ties to the United States, hesitated to condemn the invasion outright, the majority demanded immediate and unconditional withdrawal of American forces from Greenland. The internal rift within NATO was evident, with some members prioritizing their strategic alliances with the US over the collective stance of the organization. Hesitant to condemn the invasion outright, these members found themselves at odds with the majority, who viewed the invasion as a clear violation of NATO's principles. The majority demanded immediate and unconditional withdrawal of American forces from Greenland, emphasizing the need to uphold international law and NATO's foundational values. The crisis threatened to unravel the alliance from within, as decades-old partnerships were strained to the breaking point. The cohesion that had defined NATO for so long was now at risk. As decades-old partnerships were strained to the breaking point, the future of NATO seemed more uncertain than ever. The invasion of Greenland presented NATO with a dilemma for which it had no easy answers. Condemning the United States, its most powerful member, risked fracturing the alliance and emboldening adversaries. However, condoning the invasion would undermine NATO's credibility and principles, potentially leading to its disintegration. The United States, with its significant military and economic power, had always been a central pillar of NATO. Condemning it could weaken the alliance's overall strength and embolden adversaries like Russia and China. However, condoning the invasion would undermine NATO's credibility and principles, potentially leading to its disintegration. The alliance's ability to function as a unified force was now in jeopardy. The principles of mutual defense and collective security, which had been the bedrock of NATO, were now at risk of being eroded. The future of the alliance, once seemingly unshakable, now hung in the balance. The decisions made in the coming days would determine the fate of NATO and its role in global security. The invasion of Greenland had brought NATO to a crossroads, and the path it chose would have far-reaching implications for international stability and security. The bear awakened Russia's Arctic ambitions. The United States' invasion of Greenland was music to the ears of the Kremlin. The Russian government, always on the lookout for opportunities to expand its influence, saw this as a golden chance to shift the balance of power in the Arctic. Russia, long wary of NATO's presence in the Arctic, saw the American action as a strategic blunder of colossal proportions, one that played directly into their hands. The Kremlin had always viewed NATO's Arctic maneuvers with suspicion, interpreting them as a direct threat to its sovereignty and interests in the region. The invasion not only weakened the Western alliance, but also provided Russia with the perfect pretext to further its own ambitions in the Arctic region. With the West distracted and divided, Russia could now move more aggressively to secure its claims and expand its military footprint. Russia, under President Vladimir Putin, had been steadily increasing its military and economic activities in the Arctic. This included the construction of new military bases, the deployment of advanced weaponry, and the commissioning of powerful icebreakers to navigate the treacherous Arctic waters. The melting of the polar ice cap had opened up new shipping routes and resource extraction opportunities, making the Arctic a region of increasing geopolitical importance. Russia was quick to capitalize on these changes, investing heavily in infrastructure and technology to exploit the region's vast untapped resources. The United States, by invading Greenland, had handed Russia a golden opportunity to assert itself as the dominant power in the Arctic. This move not only undermined American credibility but also alienated key allies, creating a vacuum that Russia was eager to fill. Within hours of the American invasion, Russian pronouncements filled the airwaves, condemning the blatant act of aggression and calling for restraint. Russian state media went into overdrive, portraying the United States as a reckless aggressor and positioning Russia as a defender of international law and order. Behind the facade of diplomacy, however, lay a calculated strategy. Russia was not merely reacting to events but actively shaping them to its advantage. The Kremlin's diplomatic efforts were aimed at isolating the United States and building a coalition of countries opposed to American hegemony. Russia immediately dispatched additional warships and submarines to the Arctic, bolstering its military presence in the region. These deployments were not just for show, they were a clear signal to the world that Russia was prepared to defend its interests by any means necessary. At the same time, Russian diplomats were busy forging alliances with countries wary of American intentions, exploiting the global outrage to Russia's advantage. These diplomatic efforts were aimed at creating a new geopolitical bloc that could counterbalance American influence. The invasion of Greenland had awakened a sleeping bear. Russia, long content to bide its time, was now fully mobilized and ready to assert its dominance in the Arctic. Russia, sensing weakness in the Western alliance and emboldened by the shifting geopolitical landscape, was now poised to capitalize on the chaos and expand its influence in the Arctic. The Kremlin's strategic planners saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape the region in Russia's favor. The United States, by its reckless actions, had inadvertently strengthened the hand of its adversaries, setting the stage for a new era of great power competition in the high north. The Arctic, once a frozen frontier, was now a hotbed of geopolitical intrigue and rivalry. Gap 3S, the aftermath, global repercussions. The United States invasion of Greenland sent shockwaves around the globe, sparking a chain reaction of political, economic, and social upheavals. The sudden military action disrupted the delicate balance of international relations, leading to immediate and far-reaching consequences. The immediate aftermath saw a flurry of emergency meetings at the United Nations, where world leaders scrambled to address the crisis. Diplomatic channels were flooded with urgent communications as countries sought to understand the implications and formulate a collective response. The invasion had not only fractured the Western alliance, but also triggered a widespread condemnation from countries across the political spectrum. Nations that were once allies found themselves at odds, and the global political landscape became increasingly polarized. Protests erupted in major cities worldwide, with people taking to the streets to voice their opposition to the invasion and demand an end to the aggression. The public outcry was a powerful reminder of the global desire for peace and stability. The global economy, already fragile from ongoing trade wars and the COVID-19 pandemic, teetered on the brink of a recession. The invasion exacerbated existing vulnerabilities, leading to a sharp decline in investor confidence and economic stability. Stock markets plunged and oil prices spiked as uncertainty gripped the financial world. The volatility in the markets reflected the broader anxiety about the future of global trade and economic cooperation. In Europe, the invasion reignited old debates about the continent's reliance on American military power. Discussions about the need for a more autonomous European defense strategy gained momentum, highlighting the shifting dynamics within NATO. NATO, struggling to maintain unity, faced an existential crisis. Member states were divided on how to respond, with some advocating for a stronger stance against the US actions, while others called for a more measured approach. Member states, particularly those in close proximity to the Arctic, began to reassess their defense strategies and look for alternative alliances. The strategic importance of the Arctic region became a focal point of military planning and international diplomacy. The European Union, meanwhile, called for a comprehensive review of its foreign policy, emphasizing the need for greater strategic autonomy. The invasion underscored the importance of a unified and independent European stance in global affairs. The Arctic Council, an intergovernmental forum that includes Arctic and non-Arctic nations, convened an emergency session to address the escalating tensions in the region. The Council's role as a platform for cooperation was put to the test as member states navigated the complex geopolitical landscape. The Council, which had long been a platform for cooperation and dialogue, now found itself at the center of a geopolitical storm. The discussions were marked by intense debates over the future of Arctic governance and the need for stronger international regulations. Member states debated the future of Arctic governance, with some calling for stronger international regulations to prevent further militarization of the region. The potential for conflict in the Arctic became a pressing concern for the global community. In the United States, the invasion sparked a fierce political backlash. The decision to invade Greenland was met with widespread criticism from both political parties, leading to a heated debate about the country's foreign policy direction. Congressional hearings were held to investigate the decision-making process that led to the invasion, and calls for accountability grew louder. Lawmakers demanded answers from military and government officials, seeking to understand the rationale behind the controversial move. The American public, weary of endless conflicts, demanded a clear exit strategy and a renewed focus on domestic issues. The invasion reignited debates about the country's priorities and the need for a more balanced approach to international and domestic policy. As the world grappled with the consequences of the invasion, one thing became clear: the geopolitical landscape had been irrevocably altered. The ripple effects of the US actions were felt in every corner of the globe, reshaping international relations and strategic alliances. The actions of the United States had set off a domino effect, reshaping alliances, shifting power dynamics, and creating new opportunities and challenges for nations around the globe. Countries were forced to reevaluate their positions and strategies in light of the new geopolitical reality. In this new era of uncertainty, the world watched with bated breath, wondering what the next move would be in the high-stakes game of global politics. The invasion of Greenland had set the stage for a complex and unpredictable future, with far-reaching implications for international stability. Gap 2S. To further its interests in the Arctic. The geopolitical upheaval created by the invasion allowed China to maneuver diplomatically and economically, seeking to fill any power vacuums that emerged. The invasion had thrown the region into disarray, weakening the Western alliance and potentially creating a power vacuum that China could exploit. Chinese military strategists and policymakers closely analyzed the shifting alliances and the potential for new partnerships in the Arctic. China, with its long-term strategic outlook, saw the events in Greenland as a chance to reshape the geopolitical landscape to its advantage. Chinese leaders convened high-level meetings to discuss the implications of the invasion and to formulate a comprehensive strategy for the Arctic. China's response to the invasion was a masterpiece of calculated ambiguity. Publicly, Chinese officials called for adherence to international law and a peaceful resolution, while privately they explored ways to leverage the situation to enhance China's influence. Publicly, China expressed concern over the violation of international law and called for a peaceful resolution to the crisis. Chinese spokespersons emphasized the importance of respecting sovereignty and maintaining stability in the Arctic region. Behind the scenes, however, China wasted no time in leveraging the situation to its benefit. Chinese diplomats engaged in back-channel negotiations, seeking to build alliances and secure economic agreements with Arctic nations. Chinese diplomats reached out to Arctic nations, offering economic cooperation and investment opportunities. These offers included infrastructure development, scientific collaboration, and trade agreements aimed at strengthening China's presence in the region. Simultaneously, China increased its scientific research activities in the Arctic, gathering valuable data and establishing a foothold in the region. Chinese research stations and vessels became more active, contributing to the global understanding of the Arctic environment. The United States' invasion of Greenland had inadvertently opened the door for China to expand its influence in the Arctic. As the US faced international criticism and logistical challenges, China positioned itself as a stabilizing force and a potential partner for Arctic development. While the United States was bogged down in a costly and unpopular military adventure, China was busy building relationships, securing access to resources, and positioning itself as a key player in the future of the Arctic. Chinese officials engaged in high-level economic talks, seeking to capitalize on the shifting dynamics. The dragon's shadow now loomed large over the high north, a potent symbol of the shifting balance of power in a rapidly changing world. China's strategic moves in the Arctic highlighted its ambition to become a dominant global power, reshaping the geopolitical landscape in its favor.